start our pre-show hangout with any of you who are still managing to want to hear from Aaron King. Oy, I don't blame you if you have the thought whatsoever that you're like, well, I think I'm going to do some other stuff tonight. Don't have any disagreement there. All right, 6:52. Got some time. Let's go ahead. Oh, there's the ad. All right, cool. I'll listen to that in a second. Let's go. Okay. Okay, I feel like it was quiet last night. Hey, Chris is here. Yo, here because I have to work, and if I didn't join now, I would forget. LOL. All right, I think I'm going to go a little bit higher on this. I feel like that's just too soft. Let me go ahead and test that audio some more. Here in about 30 seconds, 12 seconds from now. Cheryl's here again on vacation. Where are you vacationing? Are you having a great time? Like, you're not in East Coast time for sure. Let's see. Does this get much louder? I know. Let's see. I'm checking my volume there, and there it's fine. I forgot it was. Oh, that might be way too loud. Yeah, let me bring that down a notch. All right, 2 notches. Hopefully 2 notches wasn't too bad. Hey, guys. Hey from Blake. And Kathy Hennehan said, holiday week screw me up. Yeah, I guess so, huh? We had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, all right in a row, too. I was busy. Tim Bradley. Hey, Aaron, I sent you an email with the problem photo. Awesome, yes. We'll be tackling Milky Way Wednesday emails next week, and I believe I'll probably be busy the entire episode with 1. Okay, nope, that was too much. Okay, so apparently 1 notch was the key. 1 notch was the key. All right, let's see. Let me double check on Milky Way Wednesday. See if I got Tim's email. No, I don't have Tim's email. He must have sent it to Aaron King. We're in Eastern Standard Time. Oh, you are, but you're just on vacation, so it doesn't matter how late you stay up. Gotcha. That makes sense. That's what you were saying. Okay, so as far as... Yeah, 1 notch is the definite key. I'm going to turn off the echo of this now. Okay, Lorenciu is here. Hiya, all. Dave is here. Awesome. Chris, the other Chris. No, it's the same Chris. Chris Woodruff was the first Chris. And bum, bum, bum. We're going to get started in 5 minutes. 5 minutes and counting. Let's see. Gmail, making sure I got Tim's email. Oh, good. Yeah, banding question. Interesting. Okay, cool. Single image, Tim, or is this isn't a small pano, right? Like a pano just in a small space, like a Brady Bunch pano, or is this a single image? Because I do see your banding that's going through the clouds. Honestly, I think most of the time, and this is without much more than a guess, is that your sensor after a while starts showing up more. But there's also a chance that underexposed areas show the sensor texture a little bit, but this banding is interesting. Okay, there's definitely some compression going on too, so I think the banding might be due to whatever noise reduction you're doing, because there's some weird compression on the clouds all over. Interesting. No single. Okay, cool. Mark Moore is here. Hey everybody. Jim is here. Oh, John, that's right, not Jim Foti, John Foti. John is here. Welcome in, John. I think I've called you Jim several times, so I apologize for that. And would be fantabulous. Yeah, I know, Bob. Bob's probably not here right now. He signed up for my annular eclipse using that $1,000 deal, and he's like, man, if we go to the Temple of the Sun or Moon, it would be fantabulous. Yeah, I've noticed that the Temple of the Sun works perfectly with the annular eclipse right on top of it. But I want to check the composition, and I want to check the way of getting 8 people out there. I've honestly never done it myself because of the driving through the small river, and one at some parts of the season and then one drive-in. I haven't done the other drive-in, so I have experience to get with the Cathedral Valley area of Capitol Reef. Bum, 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 bum. I shot those rocks during the late afternoon about 6 years ago. Yeah, it's not the great time. Too bad you weren't there. Oh, this will be a great tune-up for the 2024 total eclipse. Yes. All right, cool. Jim is my uncle. John says. So when I'm calling him Jim sometimes, I'm just talking to his uncle. Oh, yeah, I have a requirement I need to do. That's right. I got this graphic over here that I just need to finalize. All right. let's go ahead and pull. Oh, do not stop. All right, so I am going to be focused on cropping out elements on my iPad that I'm going to reveal in turn. And so that's taking me a second while we have a few minutes. We're about done with the time before. We got sound working well, and everyone's saying hi. Have you guys checked out the workshops to see if there's any that you want to join me for? I know Kathy and Bob have joined in. I've got plenty that I can name that have, but there's a lot more slots available, and those will go for $1,800 after 9 o'clock tonight. So right now it's 7 p.m. almost, and so just expect that to be an issue of raising the price. How about you speak English, Sharon? What do I have to do? I feel a little exhausted, to be honest. All of the live streams and the other work and the edits that I've done and recording I've done over the weekend has left me a little exhausted right now. So we're going to take it easy on Milky Way Wednesday and talk about our techniques that we haven't mentioned yet. And I'll go into them as fast and as swiftly and smartly as I can in a way that is entertaining and educational without being too boring. But I got to admit, I'm a little exhausted. Let's see if I can get this to come off better. There we go. I'm just drawing circles around items on an iPad where basically it allows me to reveal things in steps instead of all at once. So that way we can talk about these things. It's kind of like a poor man's way of making a slideshow or a PowerPoint presentation where you reveal points in the presentation. But instead what I have is a wall of text that I've written on this iPad, and then I'm just I'm cutting out everything, and then I'll just undo all my deleting in turn. All right, almost done. I know this is like the most boring pre-show probably yet, since I'm not even switching out to another video, and I'm not even reading what you may be writing right now because I have to do this before I run out of time. And I have 17 to 36 different circles to draw around all my notes. And three more cuts to go. And then I'll be more interesting and not the guy staring down at a screen, talking, kind of rambling about whatever. Oh, finite. That's probably useless to do what I just did there. Cool. That last part, not what I was talking about. Cool. Dan's here. Jerry's here. Let's see. And John just said, I just returned home from a 3,000-mile Milky Way trip to Wyoming during the new moon period. Wow, cool. What did you capture up there? Were you up in Grand Tetons? Did you go further into Yellowstone? What did you capture with the Milky Way over? Oh, man, looks like I hit 7 o'clock. Let's get rolling. Let's get started. Woohoo! All right, it's Wednesday. Wednesday has happened, and it's Milky Way Wednesday. It's the night that we celebrate that the Milky Way is coming out again. I mean, it was out at the beginning of September. We've already enjoyed a September with the Milky Way, but that was a couple nights, maybe a few more. But we have another new moon coming up at the end of this month that we can celebrate again after what, the 25th? Somewhere around there is when it gets really good again, and more Milky Way photography is coming. So welcome in, everybody. We got a solid group. I can't believe how many are here after just hanging out with me yesterday when we had Royce Bear and Milky Way Mike. If you didn't see that video, we talked about the drop-in Milky Way or the adapted or what were some of the new terms? The new terms were, in fact, I did want to try and do a poll. I realized I can actually do a poll. Hey, it's David Myers. Welcome in. There's a poll that I could have done during the live stream that I completely spaced, because I've never had a reason to use that before. But all of our terms that we used, I'll pull up my email over here and look at what I sent out, because I know that we had an area blend, a local blend, an adapted, We had true swap. Yeah, okay, there we go. So I want to do this informal poll for all of you here just to test this ability. So basically, it's all these different options for what to call a drop-in Milky Way. New name, coin. Let's say coin a term for what. That's the thing. I can't even say drop-in Milky Way. That's one of the terms that are being voted on. But hey, Faster is on podcast mode, listening only. And SM Wilkes is here from Northeast Georgia. Awesome. Welcome in. Coin a term for bringing in a Milky Way. We'll just call it that because you know the terminology. And the term is going to be true alternate skies. Drop in. I'm going to copy and paste. Add an option. Adapted. Oh, I might be faster to type. Add an option. Oh, I hope it gives me enough ability to have composite. Oh, you know what? I think it's stopping at 4. Oh, it's going to be like a March Madness. So I guess I'm glad I didn't try and do that last night because it takes time to do it while you're on live, and it just kind of works out to be 4 options. But we might as well see what it looks like. So the poll is in there, and those were some of the top favorites. I mean, see if that actually works. I'm just going to test it out, but it's too bad I only have 4. So Jim was out there, or sorry, Uncle Jim. John was out there, Nightscapes of Old Faithful, the barns on Mormon Row, like the John Moulton Barn, Mirror Lake, and then Medicine Bow National Forest. Okay, awesome. How about artistic? Alan, that's a good suggestion because it is digital art at that point. But that's not our topic tonight. Welcome into Milky Way Wednesday. I'm Marion King with Photog Adventures, and we are talking about how we are going to do some techniques that are more advanced than just single, panorama, blend, and the drop-in Milky Way. In fact, drop-in Milky Way was the most difficult of those options. And what we're going to talk about, in fact, I need to zip over here and get my iPad connected to the computer. And we are going to celebrate these techniques and just talk about some of the major pros and cons of these techniques, as well as the reasoning why I stick with a couple of them and why I wouldn't do some of them. I'm not saying that I never do some of them. What I'm saying is the times that they're just not necessary to use that technique. Because we're talking about stacking. We're talking about star tracking. We're talking about dual exposure. And we're going to talk about BLUE-HOUR blends. So here we go. I got my iPad up here. I'm going to move that over to this screen. And let's go over to Techniques Part 2. Here we go. All right, so everybody, welcome in to talk about this set of techniques that I'm sure all of you have used. Maybe 1 or 2 of these you haven't, but that would be a surprise, honestly, if 1 or 2 of you hadn't. Where did our chat go? There it is. Okay, cool. Our chat's right here. So that podcast, that poll, oh good, I'm getting responses, and I can end the poll whenever I want. All right, cool. It's interesting to see how that's working. It's kind of covering up the chat. It was not too annoying. So first off, let's get into some of the initial techniques. Right here is the first one, stacking. And as I write down the 3 reasons that you would use stacking, I'm also saying here's the benefit. Here's why, or I guess it's not so much why, it's just what you have to do. It's the steps of what you have to do. For instance, you'll need to get in a stack at least 5 to 10 captures. If you don't have up to 5, 4 can cut it, even 2, really. 2 can cut it. But in a stack, what you're doing is you're taking an image, overlapping another image where the noise, like the stars are on top of each other for the most part, except for the movement that's happening. But you have this noise that is either in this shape, this shape, this shape, this shape, this shape, and all that noise in between the subjects, like stars, leaves, trees, rocks, that noise is a random pattern. And when you have multiples of them together, and then you blend them together with a median filter or a mean filter, you can actually get a smoother look. It's like it takes the best of both and just kind of butteries it up, just smooths it out. And only 2 image, you get a little bit of effect. Up to 5 image, you start to really see an effect. And then even Milky Way Mike from yesterday, he did a study where he was checking it, and he's like, okay, you know what? When you get to 10, it starts to become more work, but for less result. It's really nice to get 10 images, and I found that to be the truth too. I like to do 10 images for my stack. If I get at least 10 in there, I've got enough data for my stack to get all buttery and good, and then when I mix it together in Sequator or Starry Landscape Stacker, then I have a smooth image. So when you think about these techniques and you go, oh, okay, I'm going to take a technique and capture the Milky Way tonight. I'm going to do a single image. Boom, captured. Okay. You know what? I'm kind of worried about the noise, so I'm going to do a stack. I'm going to try and bring out some more detail with the stack or fix the noise in my foreground. And so you go for 10 images, 5 minimum, 10 to 15. I just wouldn't do too many, at least 5, and I would go up to 10 and call it good. And then that process of editing the stack together is in a software like Sequator or Starry Landscape Stacker, and you have a process to go through. And so my third thing is that when you can do this editing, you have these 2 options, 2 and 3. You are either taking your image into Lightroom, for instance, you're taking it into Lightroom and making an edit. So when Doug and I were out in, let's see, can I get to that access? Yeah, I sure can. Oh no, I see what I did. I put it in OBS Assets. That's right. And it is there. So I'm going to pull it up here as a video over everything so that you guys can see this time lapse. This time lapse is interesting. It's more interesting than staring at me right now. And so I want to give us something cool to look at while I talk about the stacking process. And because it's a recent time lapse that shows clouds moving away, being awesome, as well as transitioning from blue hour into nighttime, and just that bluer sky that transitions very obviously. All right, so I got this video over here. I'm going to keep me on and hit start. Oh, interesting. I need to, let me go ahead and iPad screen. Let me go ahead and resize that clip. Apparently it's coming in just massive, and I need to make it not close. Okay, where are you? Oh, that's annoying. This thing is moving the wrong element. Lock that, lock that. Okay, everything is locked except for this. Oh, you're not gonna do it until it's live? Okay, fine. Alright, so while it's live, I can actually bring this smaller, and it wasn't letting me do that until I made it live, which, I don't know, it's kind of stupid. But, there we go. So you can see this time lapse, and it's just going to loop it. But at the very beginning, it had a blue hour, and then it goes into the full darkness, and the clouds disappear on us. And then as Doug and I are working on his new Polaris, we're playing around with light, and a lot of lights going in front. Then I put my low-level lighting up in the distance. Then we tweak it to have less in the foreground. Then it's too low, and this is perfect right here. Hey, looking forward to see you next year. Teresa, am I going to see you next year? Did you join one of the workshops that I have? Let me just, since Teresa brought it up, and I'm excited about making sure people take advantage of this deal, let me show you over here on the screen. If you go to my quick announcement page, you can see this link, and it just talks about my workshops that are on sale for $1,000 only for next year. But this is the link that is in. Oh, whoops, I put it in there twice. All right, that should be it. Yeah. Oh no, it's missing an S. There we go. There's the link, Workable, the second one with the C and the S at the end. So you can actually come and join me on these workshops, and there's a $1,000 deal. So Teresa, did you jump in, or is it something else like a Nightscaper? Yep, it's Nightscaper. Awesome. Oh, awesome. And so let's go back to this time lapse. So with stacking, as you're working with it, you have all these frames, and you can do it one of 2 ways. You can go into your image and do all the edits like I've done in Lightroom for this time lapse, where I've actually pieced together some edits that I like, and it looks okay, and I'm satisfied with it. So then when you go over to your Lightroom and you get your 10 frames, one thing I love about time lapses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, is that I can get a stack from any section of this that I want. The time lapse, when I run it, I have individual images I can keep. I have a stack I can make. I have a time-lapse movie I can make. I have a star trail I can make. There's a lot of use for running a time-lapse that is brilliant. I was like, I'm going to go ahead and do a stack. Before I turned the lights on and it was just us and the dark, dark sky, I could do a stack on the rocks, but we had too many lights go on that whole time during the workshop, so I couldn't do anything about that. So when you take 10 images and you edit them, then you export them out as a TIFF, and you can edit those. So when you think about the technique of stacking, you need to consider one or two methods. Edit my images in Lightroom, export them as a TIFF, a high 16-bit TIFF, and then stack those in the third-party software. Or you can grab the RAWs, stack the RAWs, and bring the version of the final stack into Lightroom and then make your edits. So some of the benefits of doing stacking as a technique is it mitigates your noise. You don't have noise in your frame as bad as it could have been. All right, looks like I'm going to go ahead and finish the poll so that chat is good, because apparently if I have a poll, it looks kind of funny in our chat window down here. So it looks like True Alternate Skies Royces did not win tonight's group, but Drop-In got 20%, Adapted got a 31%, and a Composite got 44% of the votes. And that's only 16 of you actually voting. So that's about half and a third of you actually voting. So it is definitely going to be interesting to see what we get with Royce's poll, my own poll over on Instagram, and doing this and adding in all these numbers. I'm just going to end the poll right there so it gets out of our way. Yep, and I think it's okay, post to everybody that this is the result, 16 votes, and those results of the numbers, and you can see this correctly, correct? Bob just commented, I signed up for the annular eclipse. Yes, Bob, you're coming to the annular eclipse. That's right. I did see that email. You were talking about seeing it at Temple of the Sun, which would be brilliant. I know. It's high on the list, high on the options. It fits perfectly. I'm not seeing this chat show up through our live stream chat, but are you... Speaking of looking at chat, I just noticed Grant's comment, all caps, right here. Hail Aaron, hail cats. Hey man, I don't have the cat thing down there in the corner anymore, Grant, so they can't play around it during the live stream. But it looks like you might not be seeing the result of the poll on your end. It might just be a square rectangle of information on mine. That's interesting. Okay, cool. Polls tested. So then mitigating noise is the obvious benefit for stacking, and you get to add some Milky Way contrast. Now, one thing I believe, but maybe it's the way other people edit their stack, and that's the difference. The poll is showing up, Teresa says. Okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. I was curious if you'd see the end results. I'm glad you do. Some people like to take a stack and think that it's bringing in more detail to the Milky Way. I have not found that to be the case. I think what happened with me is that I get excited about a stack making my Milky Way look brilliant. If I go through the entire method of like 40 images and I use the LRGB method where I can bring out some of the pinks in the nebulosity and bring out some of the other high contrast in the lower contrast areas, like bringing the dark dust lanes and make them even brighter, I can take a stack and in Photoshop, layer it and make it work pretty great. But, you know, look at this time lapse again. You've got a time lapse here where you can notice in the bottom left corner, when there's no light, there's some crazy noise. And if I were to stack that, I would make that pattern of sand, of grit, kind of not look bad. Here, let me make it even bigger so you can see. Let me turn me off. And then grab this and make it large. So, yeah, we'll just stick with this so you can see the sky as well. But in the bottom left corner, you can see what I'm talking about and how it's definitely noisy over there on the edges. And with Tim's image that he sent me, he said he had some weird banding. Well, do you notice the banding in my time lapse here? Whenever I have a low exposure, and I've only noticed this in the last few years of the life of this camera, I've gotten some banding which reflects the shape of lines that are on my sensor. And I personally feel, without verification, oh, SS Mold sees it. Okay, cool. Without verification, that my sensor is just getting old. I have done so many shutter actuations with time lapses that as my shutter and exposure, the sensor gets older, I am starting to see more of these issues in the lower contrasty, darker sections of my frame. Where the sky is, no problem. I have this pattern, this kind of circular pattern. You can't see my mouse, actually. It's going over the rocks as well, but it doesn't show up as much on the rocks as they're more exposed. Only where it's underexposed do you start to see that. So the noise from the underexposition isn't what's causing that shape. That shape exists. It's just not as easily blocked, hidden, camouflaged by the way that it has been created. So for instance, if I go back to that frame that I have in this time lapse and let's grab something towards the end of it. That may be, okay, let's do this. Full screen on this. You can't really notice it as much. Let me go ahead and go to this number. I'm still really not seeing it as much here, but it does exist, and with the time lapse I started to see it a little bit. So when you're thinking about stacking and you're looking at your Milky Way and you want to bring out some more detail, I have found that a simple stack does not do a lot to bring out the detail. However, in the earlier parts of the night, where say this frame right here, where you could see the row of Fuki and the top of the Milky Way core, there are these dust lanes right here that become a little bit more visible in a stack that wouldn't be visible with a single image at certain exposures. And so the stack does help bring out these faint dark areas. So when I say over on my iPad that it brings up Milky Way contrast, it'll take lower contrast subjects in the sky and make them just a little bit more clear that you're seeing them. And so the benefit of stacking is to mitigate noise and add Milky Way contrast. Some of the negatives is it's longer and you can't move your camera. So if you accidentally kick your tripod, you broke up your stack, you need to start over. Recomposition, fix it, and then take another 10. So in the middle of the 10, you don't want to move it. You will be moving and fixing anything with a little bit of alignment going on, but that's not something that is beneficial from it. It's a little bit more of a challenge. It's typically not a problem, but it is one of the things to consider. And you have to use third-party software. Totally free Sequator or kind of expensive $50 at times and sometimes $70 for a Starry Landscape Stacker. All right, next technique, star tracking. Star tracking. Oh, you know what? I should also do this. This was an example image of a stacked shot. I stacked my sky and I stacked my foreground. The minimal differences that I was talking about in the actual Milky Way that kind of shows up, you can see a little bit more detail right here on those dust lanes that you wouldn't see. The exposure itself is what brought up all of this detail though. Everything here is showing on the single frame and just got a little bit on the lower contrast spots. But what was key is that I stacked this, was a 1 minute exposure, and I stacked it to keep my rocks a little clean. A little bit more clean when you look at them. I mean, very few people are pixel peeping these rocks. Oh, see, pixel peeping, you even see a little bit of an artifact right there that didn't clean up with the blend of the sky and the foreground. So you can see some of the flaws when you zoom in that much, but you don't see them typically. And so this image is nice and clean thanks to stack, but the individual images were not all that bad. This kind of rock tends to reflect the night sky really well, and so you get a really solid low level, like a low 1 minute exposure will make this really be bright. I think I ended up settling on a 30-second exposure is what I preferred the most out of this. So when you're out there and you're doing a stack and you know you're going to stack, capture away at the settings that you've been using, and then capture again with some settings that might be beneficial to your settings. Then also maybe capture with a really long version just to see which one you like the most, knowing that you're planning on stacking and cleaning up any noise that might happen. Meaning you might bring your higher ISO higher for your foreground and do what is essentially another technique in here called the dual exposure, knowing that you're going to stack. And we'll talk about that as we're going through all of these, how you'll probably pull in stacking multiple times with the other technique. These aren't exclusive techniques that you only do one at a time. So in star tracking, Mary Beth Kaczynski is the best. Eric Benedetti and Mary Beth Kaczynski, they're absolutely the best on this. Sorry, Eric, I put Mary Beth first. I should even put I should even put in there how, let's see, Mary Beth, oh yeah, Shelby Diamond Star. There we go. I should even put in there that Bryony Richards is awesome at stacking. And so, with star tracking, I'm sorry. So this example of a video, let's go ahead to flat image. All right, cool. And Instagram is brutal and doesn't let me like zoom in on things. But you can see how this image, do I have the zoom in here? I do. Yeah, let's use it. Oh, no, I didn't hit Alt, that's why. Shelby Diamond Star. I don't have a lot of good examples of star tracked images as I do not do them often, and I'm with my workshops and I don't get to do my own photography. I have about 17 captures that I've done with it, and I don't mean like single images. I mean I have 17 different locations where I've done it, but I haven't post-processed those images yet. I had a recent crash on that computer and it's not staying on. It doesn't matter what I'm doing so far. I haven't resolved it. It turns itself off and shuts down and reboots after a few seconds. So I've got to rescue some images off of that. The hard drives are safe. I just need to fix the issues running the computer. But it might be a hard drive issue causing the computer problem. So we'll see. But you can see some of the glory of a star-tracked image and as well as the major challenge. So here's just a good example of a star-tracked image from Mary Beth, one of the most recent ones. Thanks, Mary Beth. And star tracking technique involves capturing the foreground. Whether you capture the foreground first or last, it can matter. Typically, you want to do it where you have the most time. If you're waiting for the Milky Way to get to a certain position, you've already set your tripod up, you got your composition set up, everything's ready to go, and you're just waiting for the Milky Way, capture that foreground right away. If you want to do, oh, my zoom, sorry. Also, if you want to maybe do a blue-hour blend or capture the foreground at a time where it's a little bit brighter during astronomical dusk, then you want to capture that foreground early so that you can capture it first with that kind of lighting and then blend in your sky capture with the tracker later on. And since you don't move that tripod, it's a blend. And the other element of this is that you will need to post-process in Photoshop. Post-processing in Lightroom just does not do enough to take advantage of what your star-tracked image looks like. Another lost image on there that I wanted to pull up tonight was an example where I did in Lightroom. I did 2 star track shots and a non-star track shot, and I have it shown edited both them in Lightroom and how one and the other looked very similar despite being completely different techniques. One was a single image and one was a star track sky, and with the Lightroom edit they look the same, which means I wasn't pulling out all the glory from that star track shot that I could have, and Photoshop was going to make it happen. So then the benefits. You have a beautiful sky, just a gorgeous sky. And why? Because there's more color. There's tons more color involved here when you've got a new tracked sky. You're seeing air glow where it's popping. You're seeing the colors of the row of Fuki, seeing nebulosity as much as you can until you get a astro modified one from Spencer's camera. So it's like there's benefits to star tracking that's just incredible. And you can mitigate noise. How are you mitigating noise by star tracking? Well, because you don't have to use that 6400 to 1000, 10,000 ISO, because you now can bring it down to 1600, 800, and capture at that low ISO with a longer shutter, and now you've mitigated any noise that you would cause by a higher ISO. Some of the drawbacks. Man, it is brutal to blend. Brutal to blend these. You just saw Mary Beth's tree with the sky that's gorgeous, and that is brutal to blend. Mary Beth has patience. Wow. Yeah. Also, more importantly, it's more gear. You're going to have some Z brackets. You're going to have a move, shoot, move, or a dual panel like this right here. I had to buy another little head so that I could use it with my move, shoot, move, because Alan Wallace's method is really fantastic, where you just put this guy on, and with my tripod, let me go big. Where's my cursor? Here we go. On my tripod, I put this guy here on the base, and then all I have to do for the pointing at Polaris is I get my laser on here, and I just go until I'm pointing at it. And if I'm underneath it, I tip it back. If I'm above it, I tip it forward. I don't have to worry about being a perfect, 42 degrees or 38 degrees, whatever latitude I'm at. I just make sure I'm pointed right at it. So that's the first step. My laser on it, boom, polar alignment is done, and the angle that I need to tip is done. And then on top of this, I put my Z bracket and put my ball head and go from there, and I've got a Star Trek shot. I do love having those close by. So then the reality is that more gear you're going to have to buy can come down to buying a whole new tripod just to hold all your gear that you want to track. For instance, I have a Red Cat telescope lens that I need to have the Skywatch Star Adventure for and not use the move, shoot, move for because of the weight capacity issue. And so you just got to deal with more gear. Dual exposure. Dual exposure is a fun one and challenging one. This process, this technique, you're doing it for two reasons. One, you want to see your foreground. You want to see the foreground plus the Milky Way. And the second reason is because you're dealing with a different time. So say you're going to go for a blue hour, or say you're going to wait like me with gooseneck when I waited until the next morning at 11 a.m. You're going to do all that waiting and capture your sky at one setting and your foreground at another. And so that dual exposure has a few techniques that are very similar to star tracking. Capture the foreground first, last, whenever is best, and you have to capture the sky. Typically, when I'm doing a dual exposure for a Milky Way, I will capture the foreground second, because if I'm not doing a blue hour blend, I want that foreground after the fact. Why? Clouds are moving. Clouds are possibly ruining your frame. Oh, let's just go up here. So if you're looking at the beginning of this time lapse, you have a Milky Way that's being cleared up from clouds, but clouds kind of show up like that one. Oh, and around my hoodoo, there's some more, and then they just appeared out of nowhere. Those clouds just showed up. So clouds are always going to be intense and change on you and be frustrating. So when you have a good Milky Way, you just need to capture. You need to capture that Milky Way immediately, and then when you're happy and you've got all the focus right, got all the exposure settings right, and your Milky Way looks sweet, all right, you can make that foreground look cool, because that foreground's not going anywhere. There's not going to be a fog unless you live in certain places that come in front of the foreground and block it. And in fact, it might even be cooler if the fog comes in. So then you could even wait until the morning blue hour, right before sunrise, and capture a blue hour shot that way. So I like to capture my foreground second. Focus priority on that Milky Way. So then you're also going to post-process in Photoshop. And with Lightroom's updates, it's not as bad anymore, and you probably could blend a different sky exposure and a foreground exposure and blend those two images together. I personally have not done it yet. I haven't connected that together and gone, oh, you know what? Boom, let's do it. Let's go for it. And so I have just taken everything and done it in Photoshop to make it easier. And it's just when I want to blend anything with layers, I use Photoshop. One of the positives of this, you get better natural foregrounds. So for instance, let me show you a couple examples. In fact, I didn't bring up this other one, but I really want to now. Where can I find you? I bet I can find a good example in here. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Where is it? Yeah. Okay, cool. This is a perfect example of a bad outcome. So this is a section in the wedge overlook area. So going down Buckhorn Wash, it's a section whose location, oh man, I have some hair tickling my face. And I think it's from my cat. I think my cat, Grant, I think a cat hair is flying up and tickled my nose, and I keep moving it around. So I'm getting some interesting topics and questions in here that I may be missing. So if you have any questions you don't want me to miss, as always, hit me with all caps. And so, man, there's this new pop-up that says now is a good time to put an ad. Give it a try. Maybe I can go fix whatever nose hair or cat hair. I'm going to try something. I've never done this before. I'm going to click this button. Bear with me. Ads inserted. I don't know what that means. You might be watching me. You might not. I'll be right back. Okay. So I have no idea. I mean, obviously, there's some of you who aren't, who actually have YouTube Premium and aren't seeing ads. But those who don't, what happened when I did that? Did it actually play an ad, or is that just going to be on the replay of this live stream where an ad will be inserted? It's just an interesting pop-up that happened. We saw an ad before you left. Okay. So when I clicked it, it happened so fast that by the time I got up, you didn't have the ad running anymore. That's funny. Hey, Ryan. So looking at this picture, what I'm trying to point out that didn't work was that I have a great terrain, but you just really can't see it. This was on the 23 straight nights of Milky Way I did in June of 2018. And one of the nights where I drove really far to get away from clouds, and I just missed the moon. I was so excited the moon was going to be setting over here on that far horizon, and it was going to light up down this path and give me some soft, extra bright, but angular light on this whole terrain, and I had just missed it. I had just slightly underestimated. I just slightly underestimated the time that it was going to be to get to this location. And so, I think this was night 17, it says. So I was 17 nights in of going every night out for the Milky Way, so obviously my thinking was lost. Nice clear Milky Way, very bright sky, but just I was so bummed by this foreground. So 1 minute exposure should do the trick, right? Just do a minute exposure and everything looks amazing. Well, that's not always the case. Let's see if I can pull out why it's not always the case. Where are you? Oh, you're not going to be in here? Okay, let me go over here. I'm going to let you just keep looking at that picture for a moment. Okay, good. Yeah. You're not seeing it. And we've got that. Aaron's Picks 2020. Yeah. Let's do this one. This is an example of how it doesn't always turn out cool. This is almost working too well for that example. I didn't like this full pano. The full work of this image I felt like was meh. It was okay. I thought it had potential for being my second favorite image of all time, but it's just okay. It's just okay. So then you look over at, I don't know, what's this one look like? Yeah, I didn't do a long exposure to show that off. When you do a minute exposure, depending on the terrain, it can receive it very, very well. Like this image right here, which hid over on that screen. This image over here, where the reflective rock was just brilliant. Or it could do what happened over here on my example image from Oregon, where I have just the ugliest foreground ever. A 1 minute exposure on this foreground made it more visible, but not better. Must be over here. Yeah, Astrophotog, I think is where I have it. It's kind of a good example of it. It's not on Astrophotog, is it? Milky Way Photographers Guild. There we go. This. So, while this section actually looks cool, other than the weird seam right there, this doesn't look very great. And the reality is that showing up more of this terrain around me at Crater Lake, at least immediately under me, was a little bit more ugly than I would have liked. It didn't have some of the great clean look. The blue hour shot, you can see even better how down here it's just kind of distracting and ugly. So when I say that doing this technique, when I say doing this technique brings better natural foregrounds, sometimes they look like this, and sometimes they don't. Why did you stop loading on that screen? And sometimes they just don't. But having that foreground being visible and not dark like this one, oh, that's the wrong example. Oh well. Looks like I'm just going to give up on that because it's a different folder now. I'm killing the point that this is a dark black foreground without the longer exposure, and the longer exposure brings out that better natural looking foreground, and it looks awesome. Then you start having some problems. You start adding noise. You start contrast blends that happen. You have these weird contrasts that happens. That image that I just turned off. Oh, Nahar just said, what program am I using? This is Paper. This is Paper by, who is it by now? WeTransfer? I think WeTransfer bought it for some reason. I'll show you at the end what it is. So unfortunately that window closed. Milky Way Wednesday, September 7th. Open it up in the right window. Woohoo! Okay, cool. So when I'm talking about the blending issue, I'm talking about this. You have your horizon of a dark sky being forced to connect with an exposure of a brighter foreground. And there's this contrast blend that has to occur. I was showing you out here on the other page. I'll pull it up again. You can see my two panos. Come on, where's the full pano of both? I believe I have the very bright sky in one of these. But Paper is an awesome app. I absolutely love it. I use it for all my notes, and when I'm writing and planning things or love to teach with it, it's terrific. Where did it disappear to? Tell me that's not before here. It was before here. Oh, okay, I'm seeing some more of that picture, so there's definitely some more up here. Ooh, I've had so many lessons on this, it's getting extra hard to find old lessons. And I've seen a lot of good classic moments from Milky Way favorites. Oh, rats. It looks like I'm not going to benefit from pulling that image up like I thought. It was right here. Did I see an astrophotog? There's only a few lessons on this one. Just the two different panos. It did exist, but I'm not seeing it right now. Bummer. Let's go back and do our notes. Of course, now you got to get dizzy again. Apologies. Okay, cool. So then when you're dealing with that high contrast blend, when you're looking up close, you got a really bright foreground that's stretching into a bright sky. And then you have a really dark horizon of sky leading into a very dark foreground. And when you blend them together, they can look weird. So you've got to try and make them look as natural as possible. For instance, on this horizon right there, I didn't have to deal with any of the weird looking dark foregrounds. So I just had to make sure it was clean around the bush and the leaves and all that. But down here, I start getting kind of this weird gradient that's in here to try and bring a natural transition. And when you pay too much attention to it, like the La Salle Mountains right there, you start to see some of the imperfections that are in there. But overall on the image, it's still pretty solid and you don't notice it. So you got to get as close as you possibly can. So a negative of a dual exposure is that you're adding some noise. Why? Because you're taking a very long exposure, and if your foreground is not as clean as the last one I showed you and it was as dirty as the one that I couldn't show you, couldn't find the image in time, you're going to see noise all throughout the foreground. Myself, John, and Rob, we are capturing a long exposure over at Factory Butte a few weeks ago, and we had an issue where we'd go as long as we could to try and make it look visible, but the longer and longer and longer exposure was bringing out crazy noise on the rock and the terrain around it, and it wasn't getting better. It was like this very delicate, uncanny valley kind of thing, where more exposure seems more of the rock, it's better, but then you start to go so far that you tip into a noisy version of it that if you don't have a better light receiver with like a bigger aperture, or you go for 16 or 24 minutes, you don't get your exposure as clean as you could, and what you end up seeing is just okay. You know, do I have my, let's see if my North Rim images have been loaded in here. Because I've got the Hoodoo Village one. I do. I can show an example here on my Lightroom. So I went to North Rim of the Grand Canyon, and I experienced this problem heavily. So in order for me to see the terrain and what was going on the terrain, I had to go for longer exposure. This one was just a minute, but it was as high as 10,000 ISO. So I tried a couple of them, or 5 of them at least. Why? That's a minute each, and I did 5 of them so that they could be stacked together and fix any noise. Let's zoom in and see what the noise I'm talking about. It's pretty decent. It's not gorgeous. So if I do a long exposure, like 240, this is more of the gorgeous than I would have wanted. So when I think about this image at 1 minute and how clean and detailed this was, there's a lot of elements working here that help out. The close rock is really reflective. The distance rock has the same kind of noise that's happening in this image, but because it has a wider, kind of brighter color outline around the shape, it makes the shape stand out in a nice contrasting way where it looks clean where it actually isn't clean. It's not terribly clean or terribly exposed, but it becomes visible in a way that just works. This image right here, that was okay. I've even deleted the ones that were worse, and so you're not even seeing the ones that were really bad. But it required me to go up to 2 minutes or even up to 4. That's not even, am I doing the math right? Yeah, it's 4 minutes right there for this exposure. And obviously doing 4 minutes of these and stacking them would take quite a bit of time, and I don't want to move my tripod. But I do start to see more of my rock. But I couldn't get my focus for the rock at this dark hour. And so, yes, I could get a better natural foreground to go with this, you know, okay Milky Way. But you can see what, okay, this is the one I'm actually blending because this one has a horizontal landscape orientation. These are okay. I had some German friends that were out there with me, and I just met them. Oh, here's the worst ones. You can see that, yeah. These were taken 720. How long is that? 720 seconds is how many minutes? Oh, it just answered quietly. 12 minutes. So that's 12-minute exposures, and I took 4 of them. I couldn't take it any longer. I just wanted to get something, but I got a cool little star trail. So I have this option as well, where at a lower setting, ISO 3200, I've got some colorful noise to get rid of, but I do have a lot more data. And even at this exposure, I might use it, but I feel like I got a cleaner rock over here at 12 minutes than I did on the other one. I got more detail there. So the challenge is when you're already there at dark and you got to try and get your foreground, you can't change your focus for the foreground without having a very powerful light to give you maybe an opportunity to focus on it. I maybe could have shined a light down to this rock and had my focus for it, but it would have put all of this in a softer focus. If I stopped down. If I stayed at 2.8, it's going to be really out of focus if I focus on this one because my shallow depth of field. So you run into those kind of challenges trying to better your make a better natural foreground with the dual exposure when you're trying to do a long exposure. So that was just some extra thoughts on that. Now the BLUE-HOUR blend. This BLUE-HOUR blend solves some of those problems I was just talking about. You don't have the noise. You don't have to get focus without being visible. You can use your autofocus on your camera, which is why they use it. Capture the foreground, Then you capture the sky after you've captured the foreground. Then you do all that Photoshop work to make sure everything blends, and you get the benefit of noise-free foregrounds. Absolutely. But you have a big color difference. You have an extreme color difference in your Blue Hour blend, and you're pushing the light into the sky or the dark to the foreground. And I think that's the last note, so I'm safe to pull this out. So this app, talking about paper, let's just look at the app's information. Paper Pro. I'll go to support for you there, Nihar. So the Paper Help Center, is it going to open up? WeTransfer does have it now. That's right. It is WeTransfer that has this this app. So go to Paper on the Apple iPad. I believe it's on the on Android marketplace as well, but I don't know. Love it. Grant says meow meow. My cat did just walk behind me. You couldn't have seen it though. And so when you're thinking about doing a longer exposure, Jerry is saying a good point about stopping down the lens a little bit to bring foreground focus in better. That way you can stop down to like f8 and have it be a better depth of field. It'll get better focus even though you can't see it, and you can try and get that because your infinity point might work better on that. But it is more of an effort, and it also cuts so much light that my wide open f2.8, or no, my wide open f1.4 was pulling this out at 4 minutes. And so if you stop it down, you're going to have to go into the 15 minute range to make that work. All right, so let's talk about the Blue Hour blend. Do I have a good example in here? I don't think I do. Well, maybe I do, actually, because you're going to see it in that Crater Lake shot, and I can use that frame to discuss this. In fact, that's what I wanted to show you earlier. Look at the dark foreground in the sky. So when you think about this is what my foreground looks at the exposure settings for the sky, and then this is what it looks like after 1 minute. So you can see the detail on the foot is quite good. Let's zoom in a little bit. So you can see if I go, let me minimize this. Oh, it won't cut it, but I can move it down, I guess. So you can see the dinosaur footprint wall, and then you can see the dinosaur footprint wall on this. In fact, I think it'd be even stronger if I do this. Oh, you're just not going to let me resize you anymore? Okay. You're being difficult. There we go. Whew. Finally. Let's go back to the image I want. And you can see that foreground, and then you can see that one. You can see this one, and then you can see that one. So yeah, it's definitely way better with a longer exposure. So then we talk about Blue Hour blends. And I got this image for you. This is a Blue Hour of gooseneck, and we have a gooseneck visible after sunset. You can see even that there's highlights of light right here. I think I was waiting for Blue Hour and ended up enjoying this post-sunset time more. So in partial reality, this isn't a Blue Hour blend. In some truth, this is just a foreground from the day mixed in with a sky from the night. And you can see what I mean about blending in one direction or the other. So I'm going to use this example blended with, and I just had this thought, so of course the asset is on another folder, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Templates, marketing photos. Oh man, where are you? Why are you so challenging to find? The folder moves on me. I hate when it does that. Oh, Gans. You're really going to be this difficult, or have I just overlooked it? I'm having the mic blocking me, so it's really hard to see everything. Okay. Size. And let's go to the other size. I need to lock that one in, it looks like. I need to lock it in so it doesn't change on me. All right, marketing photos, and it's this image. We've compared it actually a few times now in a few Milky Way Wednesdays in a row. And what I'm talking about is this goosenecks picture where I have a daytime and a nighttime blended together. So we're going to feature the challenges of this. Oh, don't do this again. Okay. So when you think about the gooseneck on the right and the gooseneck on the left, I'll keep the horizon line in the same spot. What's happening here is that there's two different techniques being applied. I called it paint the light into the sky or paint the dark into the foreground. And when you're doing a blue hour blend or a different time blend, you got to decide which one works best for your location. And it's cool that I have an example here of the same location doing two different techniques. So if you're following and tracking with me, you've probably seen what I'm talking about. I had this shot. This is my second Milky Way shot ever captured. This is over in Gooseneck State Park. I was using a tilt shift lens that I borrowed from Brendan because it had a better aperture than the lens that I had. And I was using a crop sensor Canon 70D. And so I really wanted to get as much light as possible. I was stoked to be here and I didn't want to waste it. And so I'm like, hey, do you got something better? And he's like, yeah, I got this tilt shift I'm not using. So I think I used a 20 millimeter tilt shift. And so this tilt shift lens had some crazy chromatic aberration and coma in the corner, but that wasn't important to me in 2016. But you can see I've taken my dark sky and I've painted it down. So when you see this image, this is the pano of my Crater Lake, of my Canyonlands image. You can see the sky by itself and how the foreground is basically gone. I did paint it back and burned it back in post so that I had an easier time blending them together intentionally, but I have a completely dark foreground. So now when I try and blend that onto an image, oh, I'm closing the wrong ones, aren't I? When I am, I closed my other goosenecks one, and I thought going back would be faster. All right, here we go. And then change the order. Cool. So when I got my gooseneck shot over here, I have a really, really, really dark sky, but it doesn't look like it. And the reason why it doesn't look like it is because I needed to take the light of the foreground and paint it up into the sky instead of taking the dark of the foreground, the sky, and painting it down. Why did I do that? Because I had these interesting tops here of color that I really enjoyed. I could easily paint the dark version of the sky down into this and bring the gradient of dark edges of rock into this and eventually make it look natural, kind of like how it looks here, where you can see, if you pay close attention, that I've got some really, really dark painted hill crests, the peaks of this, and oh, I hate you, Windows, so much. Right here, this blends into the daytime one, so I have 50-50, let's say, right here, daytime gooseneck rock and nighttime gooseneck rock, and that transition starts to look natural-ish, and without zooming in, you kind of didn't notice it or didn't care about it. But zoomed in, you're like, oh, that's kind of ugly, Aaron. So if I did this again for my gooseneck shot, or I could go for keeping it natural and knowing that I was going to leave a very, very bright horizon, I was going to need to paint some more light up into my Milky Way to make this transition work. So what I end up with becomes a Milky Way that looks like it's showing up through light pollution, a Milky Way that's showing up through bright sky. Two people who I really like their art and like the way they handle Blue Hour are Jess Santos and Joshua Snow. And now that you think about this method of blending the Blue Hour in by doing light from the foreground up into the sky or bringing dark from the sky down to the foreground, you're going to see which ones they favor. Jess Santos, images. So you've got this rock, you've got this area. And let me open this image in a new tab. And let's open up this image in a new tab. And then where's her really cool one with the rock? I have it actually saved on my computer. Let me just do Jess Santos Milky Way so I don't get all the other Jess Santoses in here. All right, that makes it a lot easier. Cool. And the one I'm thinking about, that's a perfect example right there. Open image in new tab. All right, cool. Oh, wow. Did it have to be a thumbnail? Let's see if I can get this one to be large because I really like what happened there to make it work. Well, it was this one, right? The little cholla cacti. All right. Cool. There we go. Open image in new tab. Sweet. Now we can zoom in a little bit. Awesome. So Jess Santos, what is she doing? She is doing a couple things, and that's working really well for her. First thing you're noticing most likely is that they are extremely purple. And that's the art, and that's the artistic choice she's made to fix her technique, to make her technique look natural. So you've got a dark part of the sky, but a dark part of the mountain that didn't have a problem blending. But then you got this section down here that you had either some distant light pollution or just a necessity of making it blend together where she has a highlight on the horizon that makes that work. You really see it here. All that horizon is daytime distance, and then that horizon right there, she's even added back some of the stars through that highlight so that you can feel that it kind of connects. And it does. It works really well. And this one especially, that's a sunset almost over there back on those mountains. And you can see how everything around the ridge line has a brighter highlight. And the highlight of brightness is causing the transition of the extra bright foreground to kind of merge gradually in with a dark sky. So then we go to Joshua Snow, Milky Way. And what does he do? Images. Let's do his Tufas one. This is Toadstool Hoodoo. Actually, it's not. That's just a cool chimney hoodoo that I can't remember where it's at. Let's do this one. Bum 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 bum. Can I get something bigger? Ooh, image of the week even. Awesome. Well done, man. So here is a Bisti Badlands area cool hoodoo. And you've got a blue hour shot, very typical blue, where it's got a lot of detail, but not a lot of high contrast shadows and darkness. It does have shadow, as there is some light stemming from the west that's causing it to have angular light, but it's not like a sun is out or anything. So it's got a great blue hour, and then you bring it in with the sky. So what do? How do you make this really blue-looking foreground look natural with a very, very dark sky? When I had this image, my foreground, I kept it from being too blue, but it was also during the end of after the sunset with a little bit of glow probably on the horizon over here. So there's some orange in here fighting back the blue. So I didn't have to make my sky all that blue to make it work. In this case, he definitely does. He definitely does, and it looks great. This one, he doesn't do it. Let's open this image in new tab, very small, but let's just go for it. You'll see it fuzzy, but you can see how the highlight around the lady slipper right here, the boot over there in Alabama Hills, has some really nice, really expected highlights in the sky to blend in this sky. Make it nice. Okay, cool. I just thought about the time, and I was right. I nailed it. It is 8 o'clock. So this technique of doing a blue hour blend has its drawback as you deal with needing to push the light to the sky or push the dark into the foreground, and you start to have big color differences that you need to make to fix it, but you get noise-free foregrounds and you get a lot of attention out there. So then, here we go. Let's just do a quick summary, then I'm going to answer some of the questions that are out there. The other techniques that you can initiate, you can use, take advantage of, tools in your tool belt for Milky Way photography. You've got, let's look at the original one, single images. just complete easy taking it. The con is that your foreground might be dark. Panorama is very easy. It pushes back the noise. It's amazing. And it also kind of hides and pushes back any focus issues you might have. But then the con is that you must have something interesting all the way to your right and all the way to your left, and you have to pay attention to how much you overlap to make sure the technique works and the panorama turns out. The other option is a blend. Making it work is just, it's making that scene work. You've got a foreground that's awesome and the sky wasn't. Or the foreground's awesome, but you go up higher and capture the sky, and now you got a clean sky, and you can really make it look perfect behind that foreground you captured. But it may not work as intended sometimes, these blends. So for instance, actually I'm talking about drop-in, and I'm looking at the blend. The blend is basically where you're blending in 2 different times. It may not work as intended is a good example of my Crater Lake using the same technique as my Canyonland shot. But then the drop-in, or as Bob asks, is it drop-in, is it composite, or an adapted? We are still deciding. Bob, we're going to go ahead and let Royce's and Milky Way mics, losing my voice, Royce's and Milky Way mics, we're going to let their poll go through too. I'm going to add up all the numbers, and we'll pick one. We'll pick one, but it hasn't been picked yet. So then tonight's techniques are much more difficult. Stacking, where you have to capture many in a row. It's very easy technique, and it's just single images typically. You don't have to do anything. You're just going to stack them to make them neater, and you have to go back and do it in post, but you'll have to use a third-party software to make that stack. Or you can do the hard work in Photoshop. It's not terrible, but I have personally never done it using Photoshop layers. Then you got star tracking, much more gear. It's brutal to blend those two together as you got something moving and blurring, and you got something that got to keep it stiff and perfect, and then cut in the sky around it. It is much more work, but you get a beautiful, beautiful sky. Then you got the dual exposure that can give you a brilliant image sometimes and an okay image another time. And it's basically what the blend can be, but with dual exposure, you're going to actually change your settings. You're not just changing times. You're actually changing settings. And you're also not just changing the fact that this foreground was taken now and that your sky is taken when this is in position. And so you've got, I mean, in that case, it kind of seems like the same one. Is there any reason to look at this blend and make it different than dual exposure? I have a dual exposure change on my blend. Blends during the day aren't different exposures, but you do blend things like a light trail. Same exposure settings, but it blends together. Light painting will use a blend where you have 2 different images, one where you lit it up and one where you didn't. That blend is kind of redundant with the dual exposure panorama. Because I was considering panorama here mostly, but I decided to just call it dual exposure because you use it whether or not it's a pano. So I guess that's a little redundant, that one. And then the BLUE-HOUR blend is a consideration to use to make your images turn out really nice. And it's extra work. It's in Photoshop. It's a lot more artistic and a little bit more liberties taken. And you know what? It's fine. I saw a really funny post on Instagram today. I wonder if I can pull it up. A guy actually, or woman, I don't know who it is behind this Instagram, reposted my video last night with Royce Bear and my Milky Way Mike. And they were called BLUE-HOUR Blend Memes. And I was like, who is this? And what is this Instagram? And they have a really funny post right here that I am going to send to myself. Oh, I can't email it, can I? I will just do this, take a picture, and I will save it. So let me answer some of the questions while I get this over, and I'll leave their credit on here. So emailing it to Aaron King. Actually, I'll email it to Milky Way Wednesday at gmail.com. As I was telling someone in the beginning of the live stream before we went live, I will be tackling Milky Way Wednesday questions. It was Tim, wasn't it? I'll be tackling Milky Way questions for next Wednesday's Milky Way Wednesday. And then the following Milky Way Wednesday, I will be doing the remainder of my workshops that are things I learned from their locations, and then I'll be off on a workshop again for a week, but then I'll be back. So some of the questions. What application? Got it. Can you HDR the bright and dimmer pics? So you're asking about using HDR and handling them the way that you would, like with a dynamic range shot where you have actually gone through and bracketed a capture that is overexposed, middle exposed, and underexposed. I haven't tried that technique with Milky Way because it's not so much a gradient in between. You just have one or the other. And just using HDR, it'd be like, well, what do you want me to do? There's not 3 images of the sky that I'm trying to blend together. It's just a sky and a foreground. If it's all one image and you blend it together and choose HDR, I'm wondering, oh man, I'm very late now, but I'm here. Hey, Tom. No worries. So that's an interesting thought. I don't have a good example in my Lightroom right now to try that, Ron, but I'd be curious to see how Lightroom would handle it with their HDR merge. Paul says, hey, can a program like Topaz Denoise solve some of the foreground noise problems you were pointing out? Absolutely. The algorithm of the denoise program of Topaz is really good. It's really solid, and so when you use it, you'll end up getting a lot more detail. In fact, I don't have an example here, but we were using it on Alien Throne with a guy whose image we were editing after our Bistite Badlands workshop, where he had some craziness in Alien Throne that was not as nice as it could have been, and we didn't have time with everybody all working in, taking turns, for him to stack. He couldn't stack. We need to get in and get out. So we tried Topaz Denoise, and it turned out really well. I have a video of it for his benefit that I can re-show that section, Paul, and show you the merit of Topaz in that scenario. So if you have some noise in your foreground and you want to clean it up, using a Topaz app or something similar is solid. And Ron S is specific on the ground shots. So you're talking about capturing them during a dynamic light period where you would use bracketing and then use HDR merge, and your foreground looks like however it turns out, and then you put in your Milky Way. I mean, there's no reason not to. It would just be different. It would just be a very, very bright foreground and not like a blue hour. So you don't have to go into a high dynamic range merge where you take an underexposed and middle exposed and an overexposed image and bring them together. I can't see it being necessary. If you're just asking whether a blue hour shot that hasn't moved plus a sky shot can be told to be merged through HDR and see how the Lightroom handles it, that's a question I'm curious about. But I don't believe there's a huge benefit of capturing your blue hour in a bracket so that you could HDR merge it. And so if I'm not tracking with you or on what you're suggesting, the thing I do understand of what you're suggesting feels like it might be unnecessary. That's my thought. All right, cool. We hit a lot of topics of this. These all have been these very could not find info on your Oregon beach trip next year. Link. Okay, cool. Let me hook you up with that link. I appreciate you bringing that up again. I'm not as good at selling my stuff. I should be talking about it. So information. Here's the thing. This is a one-day sale. So in this one-day sale, it doesn't have the full website where it has all of the information that you would typically see about my Oregon Coast workshops. But when you go to this link down here, it'll open up the page and it'll answer some of the basic questions. Basically saying, hey, where are we going to go? And it says it on every one of these. Death Valley, we go to Badwater Basin, Red Cathedral Point, Mesquite Sand Dunes. Those are different nights. We'll be at different spots. Badwater Basin, we're going to be there twice, one for a panel and one for a mud crack. And then we're going to do 7 different locations, and they're mentioned. I guess the main spots are mentioned here, but not all of them. Bistite Badlands, location Ashis La Pa, they're just kind of generic. But then you get specifics like in Devil's Garden, Dance Hall Rock, Sunset Arch, and Fairyland Point. But then you also get answers like hotels included, no. Will you drive myself? Yeah, you got to drive yourself. How many nights? 4 nights, but there is one that's a 7-night workshop. So when it comes to specific itinerary information, feel free to hit me up with a question. You know, this sale is ending in 49 minutes, and so it won't be $1,000 for much longer. So if you trust me enough to get that information afterwards, take the cell. If you need to know a question, you're like, Aaron, I can't click the button and buy until you tell me your itinerary for your Oregon Coast workshops, then what I would do is I would send you the email with a typical one from my previous workshop there and let you see an example of the itinerary, and it'll help you make your decision. So if you're thinking about joining me on a workshop, use that link and come and get in on the flash sale. Basically, it's $1,000 only instead of $1,800. In fact, this workshop right here, I've only had 2 people use this benefit, and it's a $2,000 workshop that's only $1,000 now. And I'm surprised no one else is taking me up on it. It's March. It's not busy. Everywhere we go, we'll be practically the only people there, as well as hitting up 7 different locations. And that one's going to be a blast, and there should be more people that sign up for that. But I'll be happy to sell them to people for $2,000 starting tomorrow. So it's okay if you don't want to take me up on the deal. So this is what the deal is. The link is in the description or in the chat right now, but you can always go to my YouTube channel. For instance, just go Photog Adventures. I'm going to go see their YouTube channel, Aaron King, and go down and see Milky Way Workshop Live Q&A, quick announcement. Click on that video, and you will see it here where you can click on it and join. Cool. Thanks for bringing that up. But the answer that you might be looking for, Tim, I'm guessing you're wanting to know where we're going to be heading out, and we typically start in Brookings as long as weather allows, and it's going to be fantastic so that you can be in Brookings. Let me go large screen. You can be in Brookings and dip down into Crescent City and go over to the Redwoods and enjoy during the daytime without the workshop, but by yourself. Go over there and see Redwoods and enjoy that. Maybe even do a sunrise there on your own, and then be back in time in Brookings for a Secret Beach sunset and Milky Way. Then Bandon, Milky Way, and sunset. Then we drive through Yachats and stop there for a midday Thor's Well. Then we have lunch together at Luna Sea Fish House. Oh, it's so good. I did this exact same thing on that video, but it's just I can't say that and not say, it's so good. It's one of my favorite fish and chips places ever. The best is Faroe Islands, but I won't talk too much about that. That's just bragging. Then you go from Yachats and we drive the rest of the way to Pacific City to go into Cape Kiwanda for the night. We don't typically do a heavy sunset, but we will be up there for it. We've had great red sunsets off of that almost look like southern Utah, but then you have the ocean and it's crazy. And then we have Milky Way off that rock, giant Cape Kiwanda rock. And then the last night is Cannon Beach, and we do Milky Way there, sunrise there. It's the only place that we definitely do a sunrise, because sunrise at Cannon Beach is terrific. So Tim, if you're going to join me for that, I'd love to have you. Beth already signed up, and so you'll be the second person, and we'll be doing a live Q&A about the entire workshop here once I get at least 6 people who sign up. So any other questions about Milky Way Wednesday stuff before we go? All of you, I appreciate hanging out with me. I feel really off tonight. I'm just so tired. I've been doing a lot of talking to the camera throughout the weekend, recording new videos, editing, and then Monday I did a bunch of work to get these workshops out for the sale, and then we had the live stream yesterday that I just barely finished this other work and started the live stream with Royce. I've been kind of going long and fast and hard and doing a lot of talking to a camera, so I'm just feeling a little off of my game, but I hope you enjoyed it still. Casey, taking shots in early twilight or so has a weird composition issue, though. If you show the big Milky Way core as your light source, you'd expect shadows to come from there, not the horizon behind you. Yes and no. Yes, because if that was the light source, it does look weird, it doesn't match up, and it's totally bizarre. No, because it isn't a light source. It isn't a shadow casting light source anyway. There are no shadows changing throughout the night based on the position of the Milky Way core. There's just this ambient light from the night sky of stars, starlight, that is lighting the terrain, and it's nothing to do with a singular source out there. But when you look at the image, it's easy to think of it that way, which is why when I low-level light paint, I like to light paint the subject on the side where the Milky Way core is. I show this image all the time, but I will show it again. Let's do this one. Cool, that has more of them. Awesome. Good example of the differences that happen. Oh, it didn't include the one I'm going to show intentionally. All right. now I will load up my iPad screen. I say that iPad screen, but that's not significant to you because you don't see what I'm seeing, so I should stop calling it that openly. Oh, I hate you Windows so much. I don't need you to resize the window when I just wanted to buff you over to a little bit to the right. Ugh. So this, you can see how I took in Tim's or Casey's thought where the Milky Way core is right there, and that's where the light kisses the rock. But then I do something like this, say this rock, and it's on the front face, not the back face. And it's not necessarily prioritized here either. It's on the other faces just to see it. Same for these ones. They're just really lit up. Just getting so annoyed of this tonight. This right here. Yeah, there we go. The inside wasn't lit only. I lit the outside as well. But I do that method in Bandon. I light the left side of the C stacks that the Milky Way is on, so you can see it kind of true here. But on this one, on the Guardian, this is the Wizard, and this is the Wizard. This is the Guardian of the Wizard, and that Wizard right there is getting lit up well. But the Guardian of the Wizard is getting the front of it lit up, and so sometimes it's the side where the core is, and sometimes it's just where it looks good on the rock. The main thing that you should think about with light painting your subject is to give it an interesting character. If you can give the rock character and that it was losing being in dark, then you've won. This image from Brendan Porter is terrific of our Escalante night, and this light on the right, where the core is on the right, kind of works out, but it's all in the front face, but it's given back the lighting. The light has given back the character of the rock. Highlights, shadows, highlights, shadows. And so it's quite awesome. So Blake Fair says good night. I think that's a good night for me as well. I think we handled the questions easily, and it's 8:17. So thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures. I'll be doing these every Wednesday night except for during my workshop. I'll be back next week at 7 p.m. Mountain Time and return the week after that. And then I have a workshop. So I have 2 weeks in a row, off for 1 week, and then we're back. And we'll be back for 2 weeks again. 3 weeks again. Awesome. So have a good night. Thanks, everybody. Thomas says, looks like you use the lights to balance the scene. It does. It ends up balancing the composition and how much you see of the scene versus the negative space of the scene. And anywhere the light hits become positive. And if you light up a section you don't want to light up, it can be a distraction. So you do have to work with that. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks so much for your questions as you come through. Tim, I hope you found the information you need. I'd love to have you join me in Oregon. It becomes a landscape photography workshop and a Milky Way photography workshop. I just mumbled all of that together, but I think you understood what I was saying. Yes, I'd love to have you. I hope anyone else will join too. So take advantage of that deal. You have 40 minutes left. We'll see you hopefully in person next year as we get to go out on an adventure together. Otherwise, I'll see you next week on Milky Way Wednesday. Later all, have a good one. Time for me to rest. Woo. See ya.